निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपम् भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारम् परमेशमीड्यम् तन्रामकृष्णम् शिरसा नमामः।
Namaste everyone and welcome to our study of the Bhagavad Gita. We are studying chapter 13 and we have covered two categories or two subject matters, subtopics of this particular chapter. The first was to do with Kshetra, the field, the known. And then before proceeding to Kshetrajna, Sri Krishna talks about the knowledge that will lead to the Kshetrajna. What happens in the mind space. That has been covered. And last week we tried to study the third part of it, which is the knower of the field, Kshetrajna. And as you found, as we go deeper and deeper from the gross external world compared to eyes into the mind space, which is water, when we enter into the Kshetrajna state, then everything becomes sort of invisible, like the water vapor. And the words in the shlokas that we are looking at from 13 onwards, they were really a struggle to grasp because the ideas were very, very subtle. We are trying to know the Nava. Can the Nava be known with the help of the mind? That is the question. And really, it cannot be known as things are known externally. Knowledge of external things is called vritti jnana. Vrittis are thought waves in our own mind space. When material things, external things are seen, observed through our senses, indriya jnanas they're called, they create waves, disturbances or changes in our mind space. They're called vrittis. We are trained to observe those things. So when we see a tree or cat or cow or anything outside, absolutely no problem. A very clear image comes and we are very comfortable with that. When we begin to walk into the mind space, then problems come, ideas, emotions, they get a little hazy and fuzzy, but we can still observe them in our own mind. But when we try to be conscious of the being that is knowing, then it becomes a bit difficult. So before we go to this third phase, let me today, with the help of some sketches, try to put in a diagrammatic form. That was the reason we encouraged you all to always try to capture those ideas in some drawings, how this could be represented in a systematic way so that we know where those subject matter or discussions we're talking about are positioned. So let us say we take up to our sketch and let me shift to the camera. Excuse me. Okay, so we are here and this is, let us say, the totality of existence. At the highest level is what would be called the pure realm of pure consciousness. Brahman, Atman. So let us say it's called the Atman. There's also the Paramatman or Brahman. Brahman means vast, limitless. That means that has no boundaries. It cannot be bound. It's nameless and formless and all that. Let us represent that as a source of knowledge, intelligence. It's the illuminator. The light sort of spreads out in all directions. That is the fundamental aspect of our self. In between comes the mind space. The mind space is the realm of thoughts or intellect, ideas, emotions, feelings, etc., etc. It can be perceived, or that is called actually antakarana, inner instrument. Compared to that, the senses are called bahishkarana, external instrument through which we see the external world. So that's a very interesting space to study in, observe and see how things function. We'll use this word mind space, and that's the mind itself is the means. When it is pure and reflective, in that pure mind, the reflection of the Atman is nice and clear. And when it is full of tamas or rajas, then it's a bit muddied and disturbed, and we don't get a very clear reflection. All that happens in the mind space. And then we have got the gross world or physical world, or so in that physical body, let us say there are these senses that are built in there. Sense organs are there, and we've got these 5 sense organs, let us say, which help us connect with the external world. Okay, so let us say the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. What happens is, so this is the substratum. The whole thing is a consciousness. Behind that consciousness, or behind this prakriti, is that pure consciousness. That consciousness gets covered by prakriti, by nature. And as the covering becomes thicker and thicker, it becomes the gross physical world or the mind space, but its pristine inner purity remains in there. Brahman and Shakti are non-different. This is one of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. At the highest level, that which is the Divine Mother, Kali, Durga, Saraswati, in a personal form we approach her. She is the power of the Supreme Brahman, which we have been studying in the Kashmir Shaivism. Shiva and Shakti are inseparable, and that's why somehow in the drawing, in the pictures that the rishis try to conceptualize, is the Ardhanarishwara, half Shiva and half Parvati, or Radha and Krishna are standing together, leaning on each other, showing that Purusha and Prakriti are inseparable. We are in the realm of Shakti. We are a product of Shakti, a finite product of Shakti. So the infinite power at the highest level flows down. It flows down. Okay, let us say there's a flow, and that flow runs through the mind space. Make it a better drawing. I think there's something. It flows through the mind space, and it flows out through the senses and goes out to the external world, and we are seeing. When this outflow is constantly happening all the time, the energy is flowing from the highest consciousness. In technical language, the highest energy is called paravak. When it is in the very incipient stage, when the first glimmer of that energy happens, it's called pashyanti. Pashya means to see, just a little glimmer. But when it has changed into some thoughts and ideas in the middle stage, it's called madhyama. And when it has become gross speech, like I'm speaking and you're listening, that is called vaikhari. That is one of the descriptions of the flow of the energy. There are others also that we have read in Kashmir Shaivism. The energy that is manifested at the physical world is called, what is it called? Bhuchari. It has become the gross elements. When it is flowing out through the senses, they are called dictionary. In different directions is going. When it is functioning within the mind space, it is called gochari. And when it is functioning or expressing itself in the realm of consciousness, she is called khechari. So it is same. Chari means it's moving, it's a flow, the energy is flowing, but as it comes down to the lower levels, it becomes grosser and grosser and grosser. So that what I would like you to keep in mind is actually a flow of energy. This human body mind is a conduit through which the divine consciousness at the very depth of our being, which is ever present there, begins to flow. And when it's flowing through the ego, when it's flowing through the mind, when it's flowing through the body, when it's flowing out through the senses, when it's connecting with the external objects, is actually a real flow of energy. Visualize ourselves as a conduit through the whole thing. In ignorance, we are not aware of that source. And the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita is what Sri Krishna is trying to teach Arjuna is, hey, look, I am the one residing in your heart. Heart doesn't mean the physical heart, it means the core of your being. I'm the source of all knowledge, intelligence, power that is there. You are not aware of it. But the truth is that the body and the mind, which you claim to be yourself and the ego, are really an instrument in my hands. Know this truth and behave like an instrument. Don't take the ownership of all actions or enjoyments and things. This is the basic teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. Here we're trying to capture it in the form of this drawing. So when this energy is flowing out constantly, then the energy gets dissipated, we feel depleted, depressed, lost, drained out, fatigued, and all those things. So that's why in all the spiritual sadhanas, the rishis will say the first effort is to somehow restrain the senses, so that the outflow of energy is not, it is contained. So they say yama and nima, all those are there. And that brings a certain degree of peace because you begin to accumulate that energy. Your general physical health improves, the mental health improves, because you're charged with that energy. You're not getting drained out, so to say. So for that, control in your food, in your lifestyle, in your engagements, and all those things have to be moderated. But just controlling that energy is not good enough. That energy has to be purified and sublimated, rarefied, and that is where the sadhana comes, meditation, japa. Japa, even though it's very simple, is probably one of the most powerful means through which that energy is transformed. Transformed means from a gross level it becomes subtle. And that is actually the starting of our spiritual life. Once we accumulate some of that energy, then the rest of the thing can happen in the mind space. So when we studied the Kshetra, the field, you will see that all the descriptions were at this level. Kshetra. It described the Mahabhutani, Ahankara, Buddhira, Vyaktamecha, including up to here. Okay, that is the realm of the Kshetra. So this is the field in which some things are sown, and whatever you sow, they will grow in that field, and we harvest what we plant in that field, so to say. So then Sri Krishna talks about the second set of ideas, second category we'll call, and let us say we look at this mind. Ideas, information, knowledge, vrittis happen in the mind space. Whatever we are discussing, listening, talking, all that is happening in this realm here. But all ideas are not same. Some ideas, some thoughts, some vrittis talk about the inner self. That means they are reflective of the consciousness, reflective of the truth of who we are. That is what those ideas that were discussed in those verses from 7 to 11 or something, I think, or 7 to 12, they were called knowledge, jnana. Okay. And amanityam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, santirarjavam, acharyopasanam, socham, sthairyam, atmavinigraha, and all those type of ideas that were there. You can write them all in this particular category. What is special about all those ideas? The subject matter, see, every sentence has got a subject matter. Yeah. And then there's an object and a verb, noun, and all those things comes. Subject matter decides what that sentence is talking about. What's the theme of that idea? And you'll find that these ideas, the subject matter is this Atman, the self within. That means it's trying to reflect that light inwards. And all those ideas that are reflecting and giving an indication of the inner consciousness, they are categorized as knowledge because they will lead you to the knowledge. They themselves are not the Atman. They are only vrittis in the mind space. You have to make this very, very clear. Otherwise, somebody you can read all the scriptures and become a wonderful philosopher and say, I'm enlightened. No, no, no. Basically, he will have some reflection, some ideation, some hint, depending on the purity of the mind. If the mirror is very clean, that the reflection is very nice and clear, and say, oh, that is my true nature, something like that. It's, with all these wonderful words like it's ever free, it's infinite knowledge, existence, bliss, and all those things are just giving you some hint about the nature of it. But we have to remember these are vrittis, and vrittis have the problem that they disturb the serenity and the peace of the mind space, and they hide the reality. Even if it is knowledge, it will lead you to knowledge, but it or realization, but it itself is not realization. That means if you fill your whole mind with thousands of ideas about knowledge, that will not lead you to self-realization. In self-realization, the mind has to become absolutely vritti-less. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. So Sri Krishna describes a set of quality of ideas which he classifies and says that this is knowledge, and anything other than that, he says, is ignorance. So ignorance are also vrittis in your mind space, but they are directed to things outside, let us say. So this would be called ignorance. Okay, so we have got some understanding what is happening in the mind space, various types of ideas, impressions that are there from previous lifetimes and this lifetime are all populating the mind space. We can make them into two categories. One of them is they will lead to the unity, to the source that is within us, that talk about the consciousness or the divine aspect of ourself, and others are another category which we call ignorance. They are directed towards things of the world, external world, material world. So Sri Ramakrishna says, to know many things is ignorance. To know the one thing, that is knowledge. He talks about this mind space, and he says there is this mind, when the predominant content of the mind has become knowledge, he says that is called the ripe mind. And when the mind is populated with too much materiality, it's constantly, the energy is flowing out through the mind space, through the senses, into the external world, constantly dissipating that energy, then that is that type of outflow is not conducive for spiritual development and growth. So basically, when we come down to this, this is about managing the flow of the energies in our body mind complex. Spirituality is about that. When we don't have any control, when you don't have any breaks, when the energy constantly flows out, we get caught out in the world. The mind goes out, gets attached with the body, identifies itself, feels it is the body only, that's its individuality and identity, and it goes and identifies itself with the things of the world, mind, and that's how it gets caught. So that happens in the mind space. So we talked about the second category, where all these ideas which were categorized as knowledge, and the subject matter of the knowledge was basically the characteristic of those vrittis called knowledge are trying to give some indication of the nature of the Atman within. When Sri Krishna goes to the third category and says, I'm going to talk to you about the Ch13, then he is now attempting to talk about the highest level, the level of consciousness. So this is the Nava. And as I have been telling repeatedly, the language that we use in our everyday, English, Hindi, Sanskrit, they are designed to deal with the external reality. They are not designed to deal with the internal reality. At best, we can get some hints out of using the words. So Sri Ramakrishna says, the Upanishads and the Vedas and the Vedanta only can give you a hint about the reality. They can never illumine the reality to you. But we are self-luminous beings. So what is the utility of all that knowledge? to give some idea, some hint, and create an awareness about the wonderful power that is within us, and also give us the methods. So the scriptures will teach us the sadhana, the practices to cultivate, so that we can make this mind pure and a very good reflector of the essence, the consciousness that we are. So the whole purpose of sadhana is then chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi. Chitta means the mind space, mind stuff. Chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind. These ideas, the energies that are there in the mind space, don't get destroyed when the physical body gets destroyed. We bring them to this next life, and when the body in the child, we don't know very much what are the contents, like I have said before, but as the body grows and matures in the teenage, all those thoughts and ideas, the seeds that were planted in the previous lifetime begin to come out, and then we see the change in behavior. And most of the people are conditioned by that mind. They are instinctively behaving, thinking, their judgment, views, opinions are colored by their own mind, whatever the contents are there. So that is how we see the world. Actually, we don't see the world, we see the representation of the world in our own mind, colored by our own mind, or in the content of our own mind. That little subtle discrimination is very, very important. Otherwise, if the buddhi is not sharp enough and we are not aware of that truth, then we say, I see a tree, or I see a person is a good person or bad person. That goodness and badness of that person is the color that has been contributed by our own mind. We don't discriminate like that. We don't say, I see a person which has been colored by my mind, and I have put a layer which says that is a bad person, because another person will look at that person and says a good person. So basically everyone colors the world and sees them according to the coloring of the world. We want to discolor the world. Coloring means raga, rang dena hai. Discoloring, vairagya, removing all those colorings. So the whole object of spiritual discipline is to make the mind calmer. Do not disturb it too much externally by engaging with the external world too much. And then that energy that is there, that has to be purified, sublimated, so that it's a transparent, serene, tranquil mind in which there's a beautiful reflection of the Atman. So here we got this three categories. Category one was Kshetra, the second was the Jnana, and here Kshetragna. So before we go, and people, what do you expect when we take up this understanding of Kshetragna? Well, don't expect that you'll have a clear understanding as the ideas at the gross level. You'll have some hints. Sri Krishna will be really struggling to give some ideas about the nature of the Atman. The mind or ideas in the mind will never reveal you. Actually, they are the problems. Down the line, as you practice spiritual discipline, and you say, hey, I've got studied, understood so much of the Gita and Upanishad, I've got so much clarity, and yet still I do not have a realization. Then, and there's so much clutter and all that. When I sit down, everything is going on. I don't have that peace of mind. I don't have that inner illumination. I don't have that self-knowledge. You'll come to a conclusion that really these vrittis are problem in there, but they are better than the vrittis of ignorance that were totally outgoing. So there's a little story, and I hope you'll keep that in mind when we are trying to understand whether we can have illumination through this type of study and knowledge. There was in a village, there was a person who got possessed by a ghost. So typically, people think that this ghost, this person has to be taken to the oja, who can get rid of this spirit, this ghost. So they take him to the oja and say, hey, look, this person is behaving all crazy. Is something wrong with him? Can you cure him? And no oja will say there's nothing wrong. Definitely I can cure him. Just bring him over to me. And so he takes some mustard seeds. And he says, chants some mantras into that mantra and then throws it on that person and asks the spirit to go out. and nothing happens. Then people are so surprised, this Oja is really very, very powerful. This cured so many people. How come in this particular case, this is not able to drive the spirit out of out of that person? And then somebody sees something very interesting. He sees that ghost has got hidden himself in the mustard seed all itself. So whatever the Oja was trying to treat him, that itself contained the problem. And so in Hindi they say, "Sarso mein bhoot hai." Sarso means the mustard seed. The ghost has entered into that sarso, and now he's trying to drive the spirit. So the idea behind is that which we are trying to use as the medicine itself is the problem. That which we are trying to use as the treatment contains the problem. In here, in our context, those ideas which we call knowledge really create more vrittis in the mind. They can never give you illumination, because inherently the nature of vrittis is that it will hide the nature of the Atman, whether it is ignorance or vidya or avidya. So Sri Ramakrishna tells in a beautiful way, you see, same thing. He says, look, suppose you've got a thorn in your foot, and that is like the thorn of ignorance, painful. Then what do? You get another thorn, and with that you dig out the first thorn. And then what do? You throw both of them away. So he says, take a thorn of knowledge, with that dig out the thorn of ignorance, and then throw them both away. Then only you will be able to have the self-knowledge and ignorance. So I'm trying to put into perspective what's the utility of all this study that we are having. Yes, we'll discuss so many ideas. Some of them will be pretty clear, some will be hazy. The clear ones are trying to reflect the inner Atman that is ever present in us. It's not that we are going to create the Atman, but they will be reflectors. And when they reflect the inner glory, then you'll feel that illumination, you'll feel that peace, you'll feel that inner joy, contentment, and all those wonderful qualities of the Atman that are reflected in the mirror of the mind. That element of the mind, or that aspect of the mind which is called the reflective mind, in Sanskrit is known as the buddhi. Okay, so that's very, very important. This power of discrimination or spiritual discernment, the sharp scalpel with the help of which one is able to separate something very fine, that which are the vrittis of ignorance, vrittis of knowledge, and ultimately you get rid of all the vrittis and you abide in your own self. That's why it's called self-knowledge. And everything else which creates a vritti in the mind, I hope by now you have got used to the idea of a vritti. Vritti is little waves in the mind. Okay, so all these are waves created by some change, some disturbance that is happening in there. So anything external material, when it creates a vritti, they are called vritti jnana, knowledge created by vrittis. So this mind can be our best friend. It can lead us to illumination, and also it can be our worst enemy. It can bind us to the world. So that's why the rishis say, maneva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. Mind alone is the cause of both bondage and liberation. How to manage this mind, and always be watchful where the mind is going. Is it getting me more and more entangled and bound with the world? Such a mind is not a very good mind from a spiritual point of view. It will give you sense enjoyments and all those things in this world. But the task is to restrain the outgoing tendencies of the mind through the senses by curtailing the sense enjoyments and lessening our engagements with the external world. That is like trying to restrain these wild horses that are galloping away. So you see in the Kathopanishad, the rishis give this example of the body as the chariot. It's yoked to 5 horses. These 5 horses are the 5 senses. They are galloping away on the roads towards the various sense objects. And so eyes are going after things, beautiful things to see. The tongue is another horse dragging us towards some restaurant where some nice food is there. In this way, it is taking us in various directions. The reins by which the horses are held together, that is the mind. But somebody should be holding the horses, and that is the buddhi. And in this chariot, the familiar picture that we are all aware of in the battlefield of Mahabharata, Sri Krishna is the buddhi. Now, if the mind is strong and held very tight by the buddhi, the charioteer, then with that mind, the horses can be restrained and controlled and guided in the path that will lead to the destination. But imagine the buddhi is sleeping or drunk or not present there at all. The ropes are slack and the horses are having a field day and they're taking us for a ride rather than we going on a ride. So that is a very pitiable condition for anyone. So the first need, if you say, how do you control these horses? Well, get the buddhi awakened, wake him up. Ask him, can you pull the rope tight? And then the horses are gradually brought under control. So in spiritual life, the first and foremost discipline, forget about the Atman and all those things, is to awaken this buddhi. And in our traditional system, a child at the age of 7 would be given the Gayatri mantra. And whether he understands the meaning or not, it does not matter. But regularly, daily, morning and evening, as a spiritual discipline, he would chant those mantras. The mantras contain within themselves a special type of spiritual energy, just like a medicine of a doctor contains within itself some powers to heal and cure us. And when that is practiced repeatedly over a long period of time, it awakens within us this buddhi power, this subtle power of discrimination. Armed with that buddhi, then the child becomes a youth and goes in the field of education and all that. And now he has got his mind under control. And then later on, he goes through the journey of life, but he knows and he has control over his body, his mind. He has got a direction. He has studied during this first 25 years of his life, called the brahmacharya stage, from the scriptures, understood what is the meaning and purpose of life. The goal of life is self-realization. All those ideas have been made very clear. If the samskaras are very, very strong in spiritual tendencies, are very strong from previous lifetime, then such a person would take up a life of renunciation and say, I'm going to commit myself to this goal. Others in whom this samskaras of enjoyment are very strong, they will say, no, let me go through this, the path of enjoyment, enjoy the world a little bit, and therefore they go through the second stage of grihastha, getting married and all those things, understanding life through that way. After some time, he becomes a little wiser that nothing enjoyment is there, but it's only temporary. Then he begins to withdraw his mind, and that is called the vanaprastha. And finally, the last stage is sannyasa, or you can jump from the first to the last one immediately, depending on how one's mind is constituted. So, but the goal is self-realization. Whether we do it in this lifetime or in 100 lifetimes later on, that is the goal. But we can take the help of spiritual teachers who can give us that knowledge and that guidance, and then we have to walk the journey. So, okay, with this drawing, I hope we have discussed just a quick revision. Kshetra is the field related to the external material world and ideas and thoughts that are in the mind also, buddhi and mind stuff. Then we have got this knowledge, which is a special type of vrittis, which talk the subject matter of which is the knower, the Kshetrajna, the Atman, and any other idea which is related to external world is called ignorance. And then the third subject matter is going to the real fine level, which is the Kshetrajna, the Atman. And here is a challenge for me to explain and maybe for you to understand also. But before we go to these verses again, from chapter verse 13, any questions out there? So all very quiet out there on the Western Front. No one. Interesting. Okay, so
Well,
yeah,
I have something to say.
Camille, yes.
Theoretically, it's theoretically, right? What we are doing. But how do you know you're getting it? It's physical reaction in the body where the flow happens.
Yeah, carry on. So what's your question? How do you know what's happening?
We are talking about it. This is all theoretical. This is what happens.
Yeah.
This is what happens. This is what happens. This is what happens.
Yeah.
So intellectually, you can learn it, you can cram it, you can know it. But the reality of the experience.
How do you experience it?
Yeah. The experience of it. How do you know it's happening?
You have to do the sadhana.
I know but that's not what's. Yes, but that's what's the word? That's driving. That is getting in the car and sitting in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So if I say, look, a piece of wood has got fire and heat, and I can say there's fire in wood, fire in wood, fire in wood. That's all theoretical intellectual knowledge. That doesn't bring out the firewood. We will say, get 2 pieces of wood and start rubbing them. And you say, I've rubbed for 2 minutes, nothing is happening. Okay, then you have to have that. Yes, sadhana.
So it's how do you know the fire is happening?
You'll know the fire. The spark will come. You will see some magic change will come. The darkness. Yeah. Okay. It's like when you eat food. Suppose somebody say you eat food, it'll give you energy. Okay, so you eat the food, and after some time, as the digestion happens, then you feel that energy coming within you. And how do we explain that and all those things? Of course, if you know biology and everything, then you say that's how the food became sugar, it went in the cell, into the mitochondria, released itself, and now that's why you're feeling the warmth and heat about it. That's the science of it there. But you have to eat the food, and even without knowing all that, you still feel the heat, the strength there. So that's why they say sadhana, sadhana, sadhana.
Is that the only way?
Tell me any other way.
I'm asking.
Well, after all this explanation, that's what I'm trying to get across this.
No, but
Don't
is that
think.
the only way? No.
You mean that is another way. Yeah.
Methodology.
Yeah, methodology. Yeah.
Is that
So
the
that
only
self,
way?
that's no, there are other ways also there. This is the hard way. You want the simple way, we can have that one also. Okay. Like if you want to climb to the top floor of the building, we say you climb up the steps. But you say there's a lift also. You know, if you are smart, you can get into the lift, then you don't have to work so hard.
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
Lift.
You want the lift. So then now and the lift comes down. Okay, now and then the lift comes down. The essence of this Bhagavad Gita, see, it's not taught by some sadhu or some spiritual sadhaka. It's taught by a divine being. That category of beings are called avatars. Avatars in Sanskrit means that which has descended, avataran. In human form, they appear in human form, but really that is the whole pure Brahman, pure consciousness in human form. That is the lift, actually. And when they come, they don't tell you to go and read all the Gita and the Upanishad, then you go into the mountain cave and meditate and all that there. They simply say, come unto me and I will take you home. Christ says, come unto me all who are heavy laden and I'll give you rest. Sri Ramakrishna, when people come and ask him and say, hey, what would I do? He doesn't say, go and do all this sadhana. He says, take the name of the Lord morning and evening. And that's all. The rest I will do. So when they come and they give their input, that is called grace. So there are two components. The self-effort part of it, the sadhana part, is called purushakara. And when the divine steps in, that means you have to get into the lift, That is the little effort that you have to make. So Sri Ramakrishna says, you take one step towards God, he takes 10 steps towards you. That means he's a very active person, very interested in you, but are you interested in him? You know, you turn your face and look at the other way, he feels very much neglected. See, you look at him and then some communication is happening. And before you know, he'll grab hold of you and take you up there and say, because he's very dear to you. But, you know, you are very dear to him, but is he dear to you or not? So in chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, in so many ways, our Krishna is trying to tell, hey, do this. Any devotee who does this is very dear to me. Yo mad bhakta samay priya. Yo mad bhakta samay priya. We read that Bhagavad Gita chapter 12, the verses, almost half of the verses end with that. Yo mad bhakta means such a devotee is very dear to me. So what he's trying to say is, turn your face around from the external world. No, there's no permanent there. There's no enjoyment there. After some time, you understand that, look at me. I'm the source, the most beautiful one, the source of peace and knowledge and everything. He's trying to re-engineer and make us turn around. And once you get interested in that, then he himself will lead you through things. But in a very concrete way, he'll come. So you've asked me, is there a way? What's to be done? Can somebody help me? I can try certain things, so much I understand. Of course, all the spiritual teachers will come. In the spiritual tradition, the divine grace will come through a human form where the divine gives you the mantra. And he gives you some instructions and follow that. You know, people just don't have that faith in the spiritual teacher. They treat him more like a human being than like a divine channel. They don't have that faith in the mantra that I will get up in the morning and repeat that morning and evening 108 times. They have time for everything else. And yet they will come and say, Swamiji, tell us the means to liberation. Do that part, and then the rest will fall in place. Otherwise, we can forever be talking about all this theoretical thing, and people will understand in their own way, and then go, I do not know what help will come. So behind all this talk is that next morning you get up and say, I will do my part there. Let me work with that energy that's happening. We'll talk about that energy of the mantra. Today I introduced the idea that this is all energy. How do we manage that energy? But the divine itself actually does, if you can trust him and surrender into him. The final teaching of Sri Krishna is that Sarva Dharman Parityagya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Give up all this intellectual gymnastic at making attempts. Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. You know, take absolute refuge in me. I will deliver you from all those things. If we have that childlike simple faith, then everything is very, very easy. But if we don't have that, then we just make a very simple thing very, very convoluted. That's why in the Bible, Christ says, except ye who have become childlike again. Until you have become like that, the door of heaven doesn't open. That simplicity, when people would come to Sri Ramakrishna, young boys, he would ask them, is he guileless? Is he guileless? If he is, well, he has the potency that some spirituality will be developed. But if he says somebody is very calculating, hypocritical, egotistic, nothing is going to happen very much. He would not say, well, that is not the nice field there. So that simplicity is very, very fundamental. Yes, you'll get little mistaken, you know, too simple people will take you for a ride now and then. That's all that happens. But one would rather have that than a very calculating mind and all that. Anyway, this is the part of, we'll come to this idea of who can help me out. Sri Krishna himself will tell all these things. He said, hey, leave everything, take surrender at my feet, and I will deliver you from everything. That which was Rama, who came again as Krishna, again came as Ramakrishna, will again come in other forms, has come as Buddha and Christ. It is the ocean that will rise from the behind the waves and take the waves back into her bosom, so to say. Okay, anyone else out there? Hello. Okay. सब कोई डर के मारे. Somebody should break the ice and say, hey, okay, it's all right, people, we can ask some questions, that's all right.
There is a
Or
question
maybe
there,
they know.
Swami.
Huh?
There is a question, if you can read that.
You
Somebody
have
has
typed
put a
a question.
question.
Okay, let me just see. My God, finally we got a question. Oh, a couple of them. Chetan, he should speak up. He says, how do you plug the holes to reduce the outward flow of energy and direct it in the correct direction? Okay, so these are the disciplines called Yama and Niyama. There are eight steps in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, in the sadhana. The Yama and Niyama are the don'ts and the do's, the moral and ethical disciplines by which we restrain and plug the outgoing energy. So, what are these? Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Saucha, Santosha, Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishwar, Pranidhana. And they're all available in the complete works of Vivekananda. I will, if you want, I can put it up there on our site. So, yes, Ahimsa, non-violence in thought, word, and deed. Why would you do non-violence? Because all the other waves are really parts of the same ocean. In hurting others, I hurt myself. In treating people in this way, I deny the unity behind the diversity. I deny my connection and oneness with the ocean. In other words, I do harm to myself. With that understanding, one would not do himsa. Ahimsa, satya, truthfulness. Truthfulness in thought, word, and deeds. There should not be any duplicity between what we feel in our heart and what we speak outside. Don't be politically correct just to make people feel nice. And you go to somebody's place and somebody gives you a meal and say, oh, it's very hot and spicy, but you say, it was so nice. See, you feel one thing inside you and you're saying something outside. That type of devious mind trying to be popular or liked or something will play games with us in our spiritual journey. Then it will mislead us inside. So Sri Ramakrishna would say, devotion to truthfulness is the tapasya of Kali Yuga. Always be truthful, direct. The Sanskrit word is arjavam, straightforward. Don't go around the corners like that. Tell what is there. Don't tell a harsh truth. Keep quiet, but don't tell false. So that is saucha, satya. Himsa, satya, asteya. Asteya means non-stealing, not taking anything that's not yours, that you don't deserve, that you have not worked for. So that's called asteya. So ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, practice of continence. That is why in all spiritual traditions, whether among the Christians or in the Sufis or in Hinduism, monasticism is the highest, because that is really what is plugging the flow of the energy outwards. The real spiritual energy that is going to lift the hot air balloon into the space is the energy that is really normally dissipated through sexual activity. That's why practice of brahmacharya in thought, word, and deed. Not only practicing that, along with sadhana, that energy is then transmuted and converted in some spiritual energy which is called ojas. That spiritual energy rises from the lava chakras and goes and resides in the brain and opens a particular type of nerve called Medha Nadi, a very subtle nerve that gives a very powerful sense of spiritual discrimination. And that is the tool. That's why the first stage is in the Hindu tradition, first 25 years, absolute brahmacharya period is there. Restraint of all the senses. Now, all these are strict disciplines. If those are not followed, then one can practice whatever, but the grounding, if it's not wrong, then what can happen? So ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Aparigraha is not hoarding something. What you don't need, you don't take, or sometimes it's called non-receiving of gifts. Whatever we receive from somebody else, it comes colored with the personality, the tanmatras of that person, the desires and whatever is there, and it affects the mind of the receiver. So unless the person is pure, one should not receive something from them from a spiritual point of view. One has to practice that discrimination. One cannot be very careful and carefree and say, I'll do anything and everything. On one side, you'll accumulate the energy, the other side, you'll dissipate it. Sri Krishna explains it beautifully. He says, a farmer wants to plant rice. He builds up a paddock and then using the water from some river, creek, channels it in here. And at the whole day he puts it. Next day he said, I'll come and plant my rice seedlings in this. When he goes there, he finds the paddock is empty. And he discovers that in the paddocks, there were so many holes and the water had leaked out. So the senses are like so many holes through which the energy that is there for spiritual growth gets dissipated. So ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Then the next one, that was the yama. Niyama is saucha, santosha, tapa, swadhyaya, ishwar, pranidhana. Saucha means purity, purity in thought, word, and deed. Santosha, contentment of mind. Be satisfied with the bare minimum that is necessary at the physical level, but give the time and energy to the higher level. If you are constantly having so many worldly desires, then you just dissipate so much of your lifetime and energy running after those things. So santosha, contentment to some degree has to be there. So saucha, santa, tapa, tapasya. Tapa word comes from heat. Heat means you have to have some friction. The outgoing tendency of the mind is to be restrained, and that's going to generate some heat, so to say. It's not easy. The horses are trying to run away in a particular direction. It's easy to let go. Freedom of the senses and freedom from the senses are two different things. So in spiritual life, the idea is freedom from the senses, not freedom of the senses, in the name of liberty and all those type of things that we see in the modern society. And that's why we have all this type of problems in the society, because the brain has lost all its energy in there, so to say, totally dissipated outside. So what was it? Saucha, santosha, tapa. So some form of tapasya would be there. Tapasya awakens the energy. The exercise of tapasya awakens the energy inside us. So in the olden days, people would practice the tapasya for the purpose of converting that energy into a spiritual. Swadhyaya is study, self-study, with the help of the scriptures, to study our own mind, not studying the books. Books are giving, the scriptures are giving some idea about that, but we should reflect and with the help of that, observe our own mind. What types of thoughts and ideas do we have there? Are they all materialistic, or how much of them are there about spiritual things? How much of them would I classify as jnana? How much would be ajnana? That type of thing. Is the impurity of my mind increasing or not? So that type of introspection, reflection is swadhyaya. You require a nice quiet place to do that over a period of time, and if you develop that habit, you'll find that what a joy you get is far much more superior to sense enjoyments. Yeah. So that is swadhyaya. And the last one is ishwar pranidhana, surrender to the divine. Divine means not some being that was born or some being in Vaikuntha that I will go and meet when I die. The divine is that pure consciousness inside me here and now. It means turning the mind around and trying to become interested in the source that is within us. So these are called the Mahavratas, vows, the great vows. When are they to be practiced? Morning and evening, on Sunday only? No, they are to be practiced all the time. So one has to be very, very alert. A spiritual seeker has to be very, very vigilant. As the Americans say, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Liberty here is moksha. Vigilance is about what I am doing all the time, where I am putting my time and effort. So these two are called the foundations, the moral and the ethical disciplines on which the multi-story building of a spiritual life is to be built. And if somebody doesn't build a strong foundation, then in the Bible, Christ talks about, many are there who build their houses on sand base, and the flood comes and the house falls apart. Others are there who build a house on a stone or rock, and it's able to withstand the storm and the rocks. So Yama and Niyama are indispensable practices that everyone has to do, and there's no two ways about it. Then comes the other one, of course, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, the inner mental disciplines. So the answer to the question is, how do you plug the holes to reduce the outflow of the energy? Yama and Niyama, and most of the do's and the don'ts, whether it's the 10 commandments in the Christianity or in every spiritual teaching, the teachers will say, these are the things you have to be very, very vigilant about. Okay, another question is there. Does focus increase in meditation as energy is conserved? Does focus, understand by focus you mean, does the mind becomes more concentrated as the energy is conserved? First you have to have the energy, then comes the question of concentration. If there's no energy, no light, then what you are going to concentrate? So this energy that is flowing is conserved, then as in itself, without any sadhana, it doesn't become a spiritual energy. So suppose somebody who doesn't have a very spiritual idea, but practices brahmacharya all his lifetime, didn't get married and is living a very simple life and all those type of things, would he become spiritually illumined? No. That energy has to be transmuted, sublimated, and that's the function of japa and meditation. That energy is to be transformed into some higher energy. So the energy in ice is there, but the frequency is very low. It's not vibrating so much. But when you convert that energy into the ice, water molecules begin to vibrate faster, then it goes under transformation, becomes water. And again, if you put more energy into that, then it becomes water vapor. So it's only water molecules in 3 states. When it is at a gross level, it's ice. Subtle level, it is water. And if it's in even refined state, it is in the water vapor level. The difference is the energy level. Where does that energy come from? Come from that sadhana, from the mantra that is embedded there through practice of japa and meditation. Actually, japa is the most powerful actual practice. That's why our teachers say, japat siddhi, japat siddhi, japat siddhi. Perfection comes through the repetition. There has to be an awakened mantra, a living mantra, and the power of the mantra is called mantra shakti. So as you practice that, doing japa and meditation, you will feel within yourself that awakening. You can't explain it. It's an experience. It's not something to be understood. But personally, you will feel that and you know that it's happening. So we did only one sutra, but I think this sort of has laid a foundation to these verses on the next 3, 4, 5 verses about how we will try to understand or grasp the teachings about the Ch13. But I like those nice people. Only one person was texting the questions, and Camille asked, hopefully you'll all have some questions next week. Text me and we'll revise this. It makes a bit more interactive and more fun. Otherwise, you might be enjoying, but I'm getting very bored in this way. Let us offer this to the divine.
ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः